Hello students, today I'm going to show you some ways to use shapes and lines to make a castle. Now if you don't want to make a castle, you could make another kind of a building, but today I'm going to show you some wonderful techniques for cutting out squares, rectangles, triangles, circles, and also some semicircles and some arches as well. Okay, so first of all, you can get some paper out, okay? And that could be any kind of paper. That could be from old magazines. That could be from flyers. It could be from old art if you want to. Or maybe you already have some pre-cut rectangles and maybe some strips of paper, just like we talked about last time. You might even want to use some sticky notes if you have some handy. So it could be anything, wrapping paper, wallpaper, whatever you can think of. So first of all, I am going to show you an easy way to take a piece of paper and turn it into some rectangles. So thing one is take your paper and fold it in half one way, and then open it up and fold it in half the other way. So these will be our bigger rectangles. Once I've folded it in half both ways, I'm just going to go through and I am going to just cut on the lines. Just like that. So I'm making some shapes, some rectangles actually. Okay, so that's my first set of rectangles. Now there's another way to make long skinny rectangles. The long skinny rectangles are going to be useful for making smaller shapes, as I'll show you. So if I have a long piece of paper, I can just go over about an inch or so, make a little notch, and try to cut very carefully with the same distance from the top to the bottom. So that's one way to make a strip of paper. Another way to make a strip of paper is just to fold over a small portion and cut on that line, okay? So these are just some techniques you can use. Okay, let's work with making some small shapes first. I now have a strip of paper and I can cut it into pieces. And a square has the same length as the same height. I'm just going to eyeball it though. I'm going to go over until my scissors make a square, and I am going to cut some squares out, okay? So here's some squares. Now, I could also, if I wanted to, cut some longer pieces where the length and the height are not exactly the same, and then I have rectangles. Now here's a technique I've been using for a bunch of years to show kids how to cut a triangle. If you take a square, any square, and put one corner up and one corner down, if you now cut from corner to corner, you will have some triangles. So go ahead and try that. By the way, if you get the gist of this lesson, you don't have to watch it through the end. You could just skim through it if you need to. So here I go, cutting out some shapes. All right, well, guess what? I have a rectangle. You know what? I could cut a rectangle from corner to corner, and I'm going to have a different kind of a triangle. Ooh, that could be interesting too. So that's another way to make a triangle. I could take one of these rectangles and I could do the same technique again. I could find the place where I'm making a square or pretty close to the square. I could cut that across. And then once again, well actually I'm noticing this is more of a rectangle. Let me see if I can make it more square-like. Not exact, but as close as I can. I've got my square. If I now turn it, I can cut from corner to corner, and I now have two triangles, I'm sorry. So there we go. What else can I do? Well, you know, if I take one of my small pieces of paper, I could either draw a circle on it and cut it out. That's one method for cutting out a circle. Or I could just cut it without drawing it. It depends on your skill level and what you feel comfortable with, okay? So I'm cutting out a circle. So that's one way to make a circle. Let's talk about maybe cutting out a larger circle, okay? So we just discovered that we could make a square, or this is pretty close to a square. It's actually a little bit more like a rectangle. But if I go around now and draw a very large circle on it, I now have a circle I can use on my building. So right now we're just kind of prepping some different sizes of shapes for our castle or our building. All right, moving on. Let's talk about some other things we could do. You know, you can take a rectangle and cut skinnier rectangles out of it. Let me go ahead and do that with this piece right here, okay? So I could cut lengthwise on these and make some short but thin rectangles. Let's talk about a semicircle. If you take a pencil or a marker, crayon, whatever, if you start in the corner of a rectangle that's placed horizontally in front of you and draw a semicircle around like this, you can now cut on that semicircle all the way around. So that's nice. And you know what's kind of cool with this is this outside piece is kind of nice too. Look, if I put it on a different piece of paper, it's like I have another semicircle. So I can have a negative space as a space outside of the object. So I could do it either way. I could do like this, or I could do like that once I start building my castle. It's an option of mine. I could also do a rectangle lengthwise and draw an arc around like this, or an arch around like that, and I could cut on that line. So lots of different methods for doing this. If I wanted to make a very narrow doorway, a very thin doorway, I could do the same method again. I could cut a long U shape like that. Once again, if I keep my outside together, I have an inside shape and an outside shape. So as I'm doing this, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pile up my shapes over here. Having a whole bunch of shapes to work with before I begin working is going to be very useful. By the way, I am working with a cool color scheme. I picked papers out of my magazine that were in blues and purples and grays. And gray, actually gray is a neutral. Blue, purple, and green are our cool colors. Gray is a neutral color. So I was just trying to find colors that might work together. Okay, so I'm going to place my paper horizontally in front of me. You could choose to place it vertically. But now what you're going to start doing is just playing around with shapes, figuring out how you want to arrange them. And your castle or building might not be like mine, but these are kind of like your Legos now. These shapes are your Legos, and you can make a building with them. Okay, so what I'm going to start by doing on mine, and by the way, if you don't have glue stick or glue, don't worry about it. You could tape your art down. You could just arrange it in front of you. It really doesn't matter, okay? So I'm just going to start arranging my pieces on my paper. And I'm actually starting with some of these construction pieces, but yours can be however you want. And I'm just going to kind of build a a little place to start my castle from with my shapes. So I'm putting down some rectangles, and then I'm going to start to look through the things I cut out. Trying to see what might work. And actually, as I go, I might cut other things out too, as I kind of play around with it. Because I noticed the semicircle that I cut out, if I place this here, it's not exactly, it's the same color as this, and I really want my door to show up. So maybe I can use this for something else. I think what I'm going to do is make a gray door. So once again, starting in the corner, drawing a curve around and back to the other corner. And now I'm going to cut that out. And as I'm arranging, I'm also going to start to thinking about what kinds of lines and details I can add to my castle. Remember, if you don't have any glue, you can just place your things down. All right, let's see what else I got over here. Maybe I want to use some of these pieces. Trying to think about what I want to do. I think I'm actually going to go through and make 2 pieces like this, or I'm going to make 2 towers on either side. So on my design, what I decided to do is keep my shapes symmetrical, and I'm keeping my castle symmetrical. This castle is symmetrical according to the shapes. The shapes on this side are the same as on this side. However, the colors I chose on each side are not exactly symmetrical. There are lots of different colors, so that'll give it some visual interest. Okay, so now I'm moving on to some towers. Oh, and I just realized something I want to do. Sometimes on castles, when there's maybe like a tower, it might come out a little bit more on the outside. So I'm just kind of getting creative with this. This is kind of like a castle, or maybe like Rapunzel's castle on her, that she might be hanging her hair from. That kind of could be fun to do. So before I glue these down, I want to do a, what I would call a top of the castle line. You don't have to do this if you don't want to, but I am just going to draw a few little shapes down. So I have this kind of design at the top. And there's actually 2 ways to do this. One is just draw a little rectangle and make a space. That's one way to do it. And that's how I'm going to do this one. But there's another way to do it that's kind of easy too. So I'll show you in just a minute. So this is one of my towers. I'm going to place that over here. So with this one, let me show you up close what I'm going to do with the top of my tower on this. If I go along the edge and I make some little snips. So I'm snipping here. I'm making a space about the same. So I'm making some little snips that are an equal distance from each other. So if you can see, I've got it like that. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 snips. If I fold down every other one, I am going to end up having kind of like the top of the castle shape. So the ones that I've folded down, I'm just going to snip across. Oh, wow, that's cool. So that's another easy way to do my little edge there. So that's what I'm going to add next. I think I want to get into using some of this magazine paper just to make it more interesting. So I want to make a few more little towers on my arc with some little squares I'm going to place here and there. Got my little square here. And I'm loving how my cool colors are coming out. Let's see if I can make a little triangle for the tops of those. And actually, I want to use a little bit, maybe a thicker piece. And I think I'm going to actually use this gray color here, grayish blue. It looks like it's from a magazine clipping, and it looks like it's some trees in the distance, but it's going to create a really nice texture. So I'll put that at the top of these. And I'm actually going to scoot them down just a little bit and put those on there. Okay, so now one nice thing you can add to your castle if you're choosing to make a castle are some flags. Some flags are easy, some flags are hard. Now one really easy kind of flag you can do, which would be kind of, a long time ago in medieval times, they used a lot of banners to tell what family or what clan lived at a certain castle. So flags and banners were pretty important back then. Let me show you a very easy flag you could make. An easy flag could be 2 vertical lines down, a little circle at the top if you choose, and then a little triangle to the side. So that's an easy way to make a flag. Another way to make a flag that's a little bit more difficult, either way is fine, draw 2 vertical lines down, add a little circle at the top, add a curved line down, make a parallel of that curved line, and then here at the end do a triangle. So there's a bunch of different flags you can do. They could be easy or they could be hard. It's really up to you. I think I'm going to add a few flags to mine. A few different types of flags. And you don't have to add flags if you don't want to. It's just an option. And I'm going to add another one over here. And then I'm going to do 2 of the more simple flags along the edge of my castle, just so whoever comes here to the castle knows which family lives here. It's kind of the idea, okay? I'm adding a little triangle here. So just kind of like a nice little decoration. Okay. So now, if I wanted to use that same kind of castle design, but just draw it onto a paper, I could do that too. And this is just a series of vertical and horizontal lines. So I'm going horizontal, vertical, horizontal, vertical. So it's over, up, over, down is probably a nice way to remember it. Over, up, over, down. Horizontal, vertical, horizontal, vertical, horizontal, vertical, all the way across to the other side. Okay, so we've got that. Let me go back in here into some of the other shapes we cut out and see if I can find some details that I like. Ooh, I think I'm going to add a doorway here, and I think I'm going to add a doorway there. And these are just the one piece that I cut out, and the outside of that piece will work great for some doorways. And I will just glue those down on my castle, just like that. And let's see if I can get a little glue on this. Remember, if you don't have glue, you can just put your shapes into an arrangement. By the way, if you don't have any paper around, you can just draw your castle. If you absolutely have no scrap paper around and no scissors, go ahead and draw your castle. Okay, trying to see if there's any other little shapes I could use. I think I'm going to put some little windows here on my castle. So I'll do that. And maybe, like I said, I'll just draw some of these as well. I'd like to go in and make kind of like a fancy wooden door. That kind of was the style of castle a long time ago. So I'm going to do that next. And I'm actually, you could just add vertical stripes down yours if you want to, but I'm kind of trying to make this a special door with some lines going in other directions. You know, a long time ago, things were put together by hand, not by machine. So maybe this door has some very special old-fashioned nails holding it together. So here's my boards coming down in the background. Maybe you want to add a drawbridge to your art. Maybe you want to add a king and a queen in your castle, or a prince or a princess, or something else. Maybe, you know, the place around the castle is called the moat, and the moat sometimes would be filled with water and have something very dangerous around it. Maybe like alligators or crocodiles or something to keep your enemies from coming into your castle and from storming the gates. Okay? So that might be something you want to consider. So I'm just going around and adding any little detail I can think of. And I'm noticing now, I kind of want to go back and outline these just to make them show up a little bit better. But you don't have to do it. You know, if you want to go in with crayon and color it in, you can. It's completely up to you. Okay, so perhaps you want to add some grass into the background or some clouds. I think what I'm going to do is maybe add some clouds to the background with a horizontal line and a curved line in the background. And you know, I think what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go back in and color in the background will be my next step. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed using lines and shapes to make your castle. I had a lot of fun teaching you. I hope you learned some methods for cutting out some shapes. And whenever you are done with your art, just like always, please take a photograph and email it to me. Thanks for staying tuned. Have a wonderful day.